It was a sunny afternoon, the kind that makes you want to bask in the warmth and forget your worries. I sat beneath the towering oak at the edge of campus, a blanket spread out under me, my English literature textbook lying forgotten at my side, the pages rustling like leaves in a gentle breeze. But there was no peace to be found in the setting. My mind was swirling in a tempest of emotions. I stared blankly at the words on the page, trying to ignore the heaviness settling in my chest. How could Sophie do this to me? I had always seen her as my anchor, the light amidst the chaos of my university life. I thought that our love was impenetrable, the kind immortalized in the lyrics of our favorite indie songs. Yet here I was, nursing a wound that had bled deep into my heart, all because of a moment of weakness, a moment shared with Leah, my best friend. Leah had been my confidant. We met on the first day of freshman year, bonding over our shared love for overpriced coffee and a mutual disdain for the judgment of the upperclassmen. I had thought she would always be my partner in crime, the one who understood me best. Now, every time I closed my eyes, I could see the flash of betrayal in her gaze as she stood too close to Sophie, laughter spilling from her lips like poison. Sophie, I finally murmured to myself, the name feeling foreign on my tongue. I couldn't quite comprehend what had gone so wrong in our carefully crafted lives. With each day that passed since our breakup, the ache in my heart grew heavier, a constant reminder of what I had lost. I couldn't bear the thought of how easily she had cast aside our love, shared as it was with my closest friend. Later that evening, under the dim glow of string lights that draped over our dorm balcony, the tension simmered between Sophie and me. We had just met for the first time since it all fell apart, a month of silence stretching like a brittle chasm between us. Sophie looked beautiful, even under the weight of the guilt that hung only between us. Anna, she began, her voice breaking. No, just stop. My throat was raw, but I refused to let her see how much I had missed her. You don't get to explain, not now, not after. No, she surged forward, desperation etched across her features. I need you to understand. It was a mistake, a stupid, drunken mistake. Leah and I lifted my hand, silencing her. You knew what you were doing. I don't care if you think it was a mistake. You betrayed us. You betrayed me. The words felt like daggers, yet deep down, I was terrified of how easily they slipped from my lips. But I love you. Her voice was frantic now, as if repeating those 3 words would magically undo the damage. I wanted to scream, to throw my heart down in front of her and let her crush it under her heel. Love isn't betrayal, Sophie. Love doesn't sit back and watch someone else take what's yours. I could see the glimmer of tears in her eyes, a familiar spark that melted the walls I had built up around my heart. Anna, please. I've taken so many steps back. I'm sorry. I stayed silent, my mouth a tight line. What was I supposed to say? It felt as if the earth had twisted beneath me, leaving me perched on a cliff with no clear way forward. The nearest realm of safety was miles away. As the summer days slipped lazily away, I clung to my anger. Leah had tried, of course, to reach out. Each text filled with hollow apologies only ignited the flames of betrayal within me. The girl who had once shared every secret with me was now a voice on a screen, full of regret but empty of honesty. It was a night in late September when it all came crashing down. School was in full swing, my classes had ramped up, and the university began to feel like a monster with 1,000 heads. I stumbled upon Leah in the library, surrounded by a fortress of untouched books. She looked up, her eyes widening, as if I were a ghost. Anna, she started, and that singular breath felt like it clung to the edges of her heart. I can't do this, Leah. I felt my strength falter. The anger was a flame I could no longer feed. You were my best friend. You promised to take care of what we had. I know, she whispered, the shame palpable. I messed up. I was weak, and I wish it had never happened. I miss you. Do you? The question slipped from my lips with a biting edge. Do you miss us? Or just the good times? Leah's expression faltered, and suddenly those memories, laughter over coffee, late-night study sessions, shared dreams, flashed before me, colliding with my jagged pain. I miss you, Anna. I messed up so badly, and I'm so sorry. I wanted to yell at her, to inflict the knife I was feeling 1,000 times over. Yet there was a small thread of compassion that held me back, rooted deep within me from our years of friendship. Then let's stop pretending to be okay, I sighed, my resolve wavering. Sophie is different now for me, and I feel as if I've lost a piece of myself. You need to understand it's not just forgiveness you're asking for, it's a choice to rebuild. And I don't know if I'm ready for that. We sat in silence, the weight of unspoken words heavy between us, but something had shifted. I felt we were both lost souls wondering when, or if, we could find our way back. As difficult as it was, I realized that forgiving Sophie and Leah wasn't just about them. It was a step toward healing my own heart. I closed my eyes, imagining a handful of sunlight breaking through clouds. Perhaps forgiveness was a light I could find, a way to let the warmth in, even though I knew my heart would remain fragile, splintered, but still capable of beating. Forgiving them wouldn't erase the past, but maybe it would allow me to reclaim my future. When I opened my eyes, I met Leah's gaze, and though it was pained, it was also filled with an unspoken promise. I can't promise that it'll be easy, I finally whispered, my voice trembling. But if you're committed to working through this with me, then maybe, just maybe, we can find our way back to some version of friendship. Leah nodded, relief washing over her. I glanced at the oak tree that stood proudly outside the library entrance. Even its gnarled branches were a reminder that time would weather us all, but perhaps through forgiveness, we could find healing and a chance for a new beginning. The warmth of the setting sun enveloped me, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope.
Part 1: The Proposition. The evening air was abuzz with anticipation as I sat on the patio, nursing a glass of Cabernet Sauvignon. The soft glow of the fairy lights twinkled overhead, juxtaposed with a heavy weight in my chest. Tonight was supposed to be special. Tonight marked our 10th wedding anniversary. I had planned every detail: a candlelit dinner, a curated playlist of our favorite songs, and even a video compilation of our journey together. I was excited to celebrate our love, an emotion that had deepened and matured over the years. Little did I know that my world was about to be turned upside down. As the clock approached 7, Sarah, my wife, stepped outside, her silhouette framed by the dusk. She wore the red dress I had always loved, a vibrant hue that drew attention to her curves. I stood, grinning like a giddy schoolboy, ready to sweep her off her feet. But the moment she sat down, the air shifted. There was an unease in her demeanor, a tension that had not been there before. "Hey," she said softly, looking down at her hands. "Hey! You look amazing," I replied, trying to ease the palpable tension. "Are you ready for your surprise?" "Actually, there's something I'd like to discuss first," she said, her eyes finally meeting mine, but they lacked their usual spark. I tilted my head, concern creeping in. "Of course. What's on your mind?" Taking a deep breath, she spoke. "I've been doing a lot of thinking lately about us, about our marriage." That sentence alone sent alarm bells ringing. "What do you mean?" "I think we should consider having an open marriage." The words hit me like a cold splash of water. "An open marriage? Sarah, what do you mean?" I could hardly believe it. We had always considered ourselves a team, committed to each other in every sense. For a moment, I felt a wave of nausea, my heart racing as I struggled to comprehend her suggestion. "Let me explain," she said, her voice steadying. "I love you, and I don't want to lose what we have. But I also crave exploration and excitement in ways I rarely feel anymore. I think opening our marriage could meet those needs without jeopardizing our relationship." Her words stung, echoing in my mind. "I need to process this," I said, my voice barely a whisper. We had built a life together based on trust, respect, and love. How could she even suggest such a thing? I tried to consider her perspective, wishing to be open-minded, but another part of me screamed to retreat into the safety of our familiarity. "Of course," she said quickly. "But please, just think about it before you react." "I love you." I nodded stiffly. The words, "I love you," now carried a different weight, one that mingled with confusion and fear. This would be a conversation that would haunt me, one that lingered long after the candles burned out that night. Part 2: The Aftermath. The days that followed our anniversary dinner were a blur. Sarah was excitedly planning possibilities, openly discussing her views on polyamory as if they were new decorations for our home. I, on the other hand, had retreated inward, consumed by questions and insecurities. How could she want this? How had we arrived at this point where our decade-long bond was being questioned? I found it difficult to breathe. Every time I caught Sarah's eye, the words "open marriage" echoed in my mind, amplifying my anxiety. I loved her more than anything, but what she proposed felt like a betrayal, a way of saying our love wasn't enough. One day, sitting at our kitchen table, I finally worked up the courage to broach the topic again. "Sarah, can we talk about the open marriage thing?" Her smile faded, replaced with a serious expression. "Yes, of course. What's bothering you? I guess it feels like you're trying to fill a void here. Why can't we work on things together?" She sighed, exasperated. "It's not about a void. I love you. I am happy with you. But I want to experience life differently, and I believe that this is an opportunity for both of us. Do you really think I could be okay with me watching you carry on with someone else? Feeling like I'm sharing you?" Her frustration was palpable. "It's not sharing, it's expanding. Can't you see that? It doesn't erase what we have." The notion felt foreign, as if she had introduced an alien concept that I couldn't bring myself to embrace. But as the conversation dragged on, punctuated by silences of uncertainty, I felt a sense of hopelessness wash over me. Our love was fragile, and I feared that my rejection of her desires could shatter the delicate bond we had built over the years. That night, I fell asleep with a heavy heart, tossing and turning restlessly as a storm of thoughts raged in my mind. Was I being selfish? Was I the one who wasn't open to exploring our relationship dynamics? Navigating the choppy waters of unconventional relationships sounded treacherous. Part 3: Seeking Clarity. In the following weeks, Sarah and I drifted through a haze of confusion. She continued to bring up the idea of an open marriage in casual conversation, while I recoiled at the thought. I felt trapped on an emotional roller coaster. Moments of excitement when I entertained the idea collided with waves of insecurity that threatened to drown me. One evening, I sought advice from my closest friend, David. We had known each other since college, our friendship built on years of trust and shared experiences. He listened carefully as I poured my heart out over a couple of beers in our favorite bar. "I just don't get it, man. We had it all figured out. Why would she want to complicate things?" David leaned back in his chair, his brow furrowed. "You know, relationships evolve. Sometimes, people realize they want different things. It doesn't necessarily mean she doesn't love you." "Yeah, but the idea of her with someone else," I grimaced. "I can't shake that image. It feels like she's looking for something outside of me, as if I'm not enough." David nodded in understanding. "I get that. But what's more concerning? Her wanting to explore or the idea of losing her altogether?" His words struck a chord deep within. The fear of loss, the possibility of an emptiness without Sarah, gnawed at my insides. What if you had an open conversation with her? Really understand what this means for her? Maybe it's not just about replacing you or finding something lacking in your relationship, David suggested. I took a long drink from my beer, the liquid warmth momentarily quieting my turmoil. "Maybe. But it's so hard to look past my own feelings right now," I admitted. "Just remember," David continued, "this is a dialogue. It's about communication and figuring out if there's a way to navigate this that still keeps you both true to your relationship." As I left the bar that evening, I resolved to approach Sarah again, but this time with a more open heart and mind. It was clear that I needed to understand her perspective better, even if the thought sent chills down my spine. Part 4: The Confrontation. The next day, as the sun streamed through our kitchen window, I found Sarah sitting at the table reading a book. I felt anxious but resolute. "Hey, can we talk?" She looked up, her expression shifting to one of tentative hope. "Of course. I braced myself, heart pounding. I've been thinking about what you said. I want to understand more about why you feel this way. What do you really want from an open marriage? Sarah closed her book and leaned forward. Thank you for being willing to discuss this. I want you to know that my feelings for you haven't changed. I love you so much. But I have this urge to explore a different part of my sexuality, to feel the thrill of new connections. I crave that spontaneity that life sometimes lacks. I nodded, absorbing her words, still wrestling with an undercurrent of fear. But what if it changes the dynamics of our marriage? What if we lose what we have? She took my hand, squeezing it softly. That's why I think we need to set boundaries and communicate openly about every step. This could strengthen our bond, rather than break it. Listening to her, a glimmer of possibility sparked alongside my fear. So, you see it more as an expansion rather than a replacement? Exactly. Think of it as allowing us to grow while deepening what we have together, she replied, her voice steady and sincere. I struggled to process her viewpoint in a new light. It scares me, Sarah, but I'm starting to see why you feel this could be beneficial. I really don't want to lose you. You won't, she reassured me. This isn't about choosing something else over you. It's about experiencing different facets of love and desire. Her gaze was earnest, and for the first time, I could see the excitement peeking through the worry lines on her face. But my heart still felt constricted, battling against an emotional tide that was difficult to navigate. Part 5: The Decision. After our talk, I found myself grappling with anxious thoughts. I needed time to reflect, to process this new dynamic. During our conversations over the next weeks, I grew more intrigued by the different scenarios Sarah painted, yet I remained fearful of the unknown. I began to read about open relationships, diving into articles and forums that examined the complexities, the rules, and the emotional labor involved. Slowly, I recognized that being partners wasn't just about unwavering exclusivity. It was about trust, communication, and navigating uncharted territory together. One evening, after days of soul-searching, I finally sat Sarah down. I've realized it's time for me to take a leap of faith. I don't know how I'll feel as we explore this, but I want to try it for us. Her face lit up, a true joy breaking through the anxiety that had clouded my heart. Really? You mean it? Yeah, but let's set some ground rules. We need to make sure we're both always comfortable and have a clear line of communication throughout this process. Absolutely. I'm so proud of you for being open to this, and I promise I'll be just as committed to our relationship as before. As we crafted our boundaries, time commitments, emotional checks, and limits, I felt uneasy but hopeful. It felt as if we were standing together at the edge of a cliff, ready to jump into an adventure that could either reinforce our bond or fracture it entirely. But what mattered most was that we were taking this leap together. Part 6: Facing the Unknown. With our decisions made, we began to navigate this new chapter in our lives cautiously. Each time Sarah would go on a date, or I'd find myself confronted with jealousy, it felt like a test, a small-scale reflection of love and vulnerability. I uncomfortably watched Sarah grow more confident and at ease in her choices as she explored the possibilities of an open marriage. Each time she excitedly shared her experiences, my heart raced with both pride and trepidation, forcing me to confront feelings I had pushed down for so long: insecurity, envy, but mostly fear of losing the woman I loved so dearly. Yet, as the weeks unfolded, I slowly discovered strengths in myself I hadn't anticipated. I found solace in the conversations we'd have after her dates, hearing her recount her adventures. It allowed me to view her through a different lens, a woman who was not only my partner but a person forging her own unique path while still cherishing our connection in the process. The road was rocky, filled with moments of doubt and uncertainty, but it was also filled with laughter, understanding, and an unexpected deepening of our bond.
Chapter 1: A Perfect Life. The sun was shining brightly on that crisp autumn morning as I sipped my coffee on the porch, savoring the moment of tranquility before the chaos of the day began. My husband, Mark, was busy inside, preparing breakfast. We had been married for 5 years, and every day felt like a blessing. Our relationship seemed perfect, built on a foundation of love and mutual respect. Or so I thought. Mark had always been the kind of man who made everyday life feel like an adventure. He was charming, attentive, and had an infectious laughter that could brighten even the darkest days. I had fallen in love with him in college, and our love story had always felt like something out of a fairy tale. As I gazed at the changing leaves in the yard, I thought about my sister, Amy. We were close, sharing everything from childhood secrets to grown-up dreams. She had been living in another city, but she was coming over for a weekend visit. I excitedly anticipated the catch-up and laughter we'd share. I couldn't help but think about how blessed I was to have both my loving husband and my sister in my life. Chapter 2: Cracks in the Facade. A few weeks passed, and what began as sweet days of laughter and love turned into moments filled with unease. Mark seemed distant, distracted, and frequently glued to his phone. I shrugged it off as part of life. Perhaps he was just busy with work. After all, he had been promoted to a management position recently, and that came with its fair share of stresses. But there were subtle signs that made me uneasy: late nights at the office, whispered phone calls, and a lack of affection. I decided to discuss my feelings with Amy, who had always been my confidant. Over dinner one evening at my favorite Italian restaurant, I expressed my concerns. "I'm worried about Mark. He just seems different," I confided, taking a sip of my Chianti. Amy leaned forward, concern etched on her face. "Have you talked to him about it? Maybe he's just stressed." I nodded, but felt an unsettled knot in my stomach. "I hope that's all it is." Chapter 3: The Discovery. One evening, after a long day at work, I returned home early, longing for connection with Mark. I stepped inside, and the house was eerily quiet. I called out for him, but there was no response. Feeling a sense of foreboding, I made my way to our bedroom. As I entered the room, I noticed Mark's phone vibrating on the nightstand. Curiosity got the better of me, and I picked it up to see a stream of messages from an unknown number. A sense of dread washed over me as I opened them. The texts were flirty and intimate, filled with pet names and promises of future meetups. My heart raced as I scrolled through, looking for clues to the identity of this woman who had seemingly taken my husband's affection. Then, a familiar name glared back at me: Amy. I felt like the wind had been knocked out of me. The room began to spin, and I could hardly comprehend what I was reading. My sister, my best friend, was involved with my husband. The betrayal cut deeper than I thought possible. How could they do this to me? How could I be so blind? Chapter 4: Confrontation. I couldn't shake the haunting thoughts as I paced the living room, the text still fresh in my mind. The door creaked open moments later, and Mark stepped inside, an easy smile on his face. He froze when he saw my expression. "Hey, babe, you look upset." "What's wrong?" he asked, his voice laced with concern. I took a deep breath, gathering my courage. "We need to talk, Mark." His smile faltered, and an unsettling quiet enveloped the room. "What about?" "About you and Amy," I said, my voice steady despite the gravity of the accusation. His expression shifted, and guilt flickered in his eyes. "What do you mean? Don't play stupid." "I know about the texts," I spat, holding up his phone as evidence. "You both betrayed me." Mark's face turned pale, and he opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off. "Save it. I can't believe you would do this. How could you?" Tears streamed down my face as I wiped them away angrily. I could see shame wash over him, shame mingled with the evident dread that came from being caught. "I didn't want you to find out like this," he said quietly. "Then you should have thought about that before you decided to sleep with my sister." His eyes widened. "It wasn't supposed to happen. I didn't mean for things to go this far." "Didn't mean for it to happen?" I echoed incredulously. "You could have stopped it at any time. You chose not to." Mark dropped his head, defeated. "I'm so sorry, Rachel. I never wanted to hurt you." "Then why did you?" I cried, the pain in my heart unbearable. "Why her, Mark?" "I don't know. I messed up." His eyes begged for understanding, but I felt only betrayal. Chapter 5: The Aftermath. That night was a blur of anger and heartbreak. I couldn't reconcile the man I loved with the one who had cheated on me. I stayed up late, aimlessly wandering through memories of happier times, searching for the man I thought I knew. But with each recollection, the pain seared deeper. The next morning, Amy arrived with a bright smile, clearly unaware of the storm brewing within me. As she stepped into the house, I felt the weight of the world on my shoulders. There was a palpable tension in the air, and I knew that one conversation would change everything. "Rachel, I'm so glad to see you," she exclaimed, enveloping me in a hug that felt hollow. "Can we talk?" I asked, my voice stealing with resolve. "Of course." "What's up?" she replied, oblivious. I led her to the back patio where a thin mist clung to the morning dew. I took a deep breath, knowing this would shatter both of our worlds. "I know about you and Mark," I said, my voice steady but laced with emotion. Confusion crossed her face before her expression shifted to a mix of guilt and panic. "Rachel, I can explain." "Explain what?" "How you could betray me." I interrupted, fury rising within me. "It was a mistake," she insisted, her voice cracking. "We never meant for you to find out." "Then why did you do it?" I demanded, anger consuming me. "How could you sleep with my husband?" "I'm sorry, Rachel." "I really am," she choked out, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I thought it was just a fling at first, and then it became more." "More?" I interrupted. "How can you say that? Do you know what you've done?" I don't know." Amy buried her face in her hands, the remorse evident. "I thought I was finding love. I didn't think about your feelings." "That's exactly the problem," I said, voice trembling. "You didn't think about what this would do to me." Chapter 6. The Breaking Point. As the days turned into weeks, my world felt as though it was crumbling beneath me. I moved through life like a ghost, marionette strings cut, unable to feel anything save for the hazy numbness of betrayal. My heart ached for the love I once shared with Mark, but it was too tainted with deceit now. Mark begged for forgiveness, promising to end things with Amy. He would do whatever it. I sipped my coffee across from Mia, my sister, as she scrolled through her phone, barely paying attention. She looked unusually happy, her face slightly flushed, with a small, secretive smile she tried to hide. Usually we'd be laughing and catching up, but something felt off today. Mia's phone was buzzing almost every minute, and she would quickly glance at it, type something, and put it back down, only for it to buzz again moments later. "Mia," I said, trying to catch her attention. "Who's blowing up your phone?" "Oh, no one," she replied quickly, her voice a little too high-pitched, almost as if she were hiding something. I laughed it off, brushing away the strange feeling that crept up on me. After all, Mia and I had always been close, sharing everything since we were kids. She was my confidant, my best friend. If something were really going on, she would tell me, right? In any other situation, I wouldn't have given it a second thought. But lately, there had been this gnawing feeling in my gut. James, my boyfriend of 2 years, had been acting distant. He'd been taking calls in another room, texting when he thought I wasn't looking, and canceling plans last minute with vague excuses about work. Normally, I wouldn't have questioned it, but combined with Mia's strange behavior, I started to feel like there was something I was missing. James and I had met at a friend's birthday party. He was charming, funny, and seemed to know exactly what to say to make me laugh. We hit it off right away, and before I knew it, we were inseparable. My friends envied our relationship, calling us the perfect couple. To me, he was more than just a boyfriend. He was my partner, my confidant, the one person I thought would never hurt me. After finishing her coffee, Mia quickly excused herself, saying she had an errand to run. She barely met my eyes as she got up, and her phone continued buzzing in her bag as she rushed out. I watched her go, feeling the strange pang of doubt growing stronger. What was I missing? Why were the two people I trusted most acting so strange? I left the cafe feeling unsettled, replaying our conversation in my head. Part of me wanted to brush it off as paranoia, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The next time I saw James, I paid closer attention to his behavior. He seemed distant, distracted, as if his mind was somewhere else entirely. Is everything okay? I asked him one night as we watched a movie at my apartment. Huh? Yeah, of course. Why wouldn't it be? He replied, but he wouldn't look at me. He had that same distant look in his eyes, and every now and then, his hand would twitch towards his phone, like he was waiting for a message. I couldn't bring myself to confront him. Maybe I was overthinking it. Maybe it was just a rough patch, and I was letting my insecurities get the best of me. But the doubt continued to linger, growing stronger with each passing day. A week later, I was at James's place. He had stepped into the shower, leaving his phone on the coffee table. It buzzed, displaying a new message from Mia. My heart stopped, my mind racing as I stared at his phone. The message preview showed a single line: "Can't wait to see you again. Miss you already." I felt the world tilt around me. My heart pounded, a mix of fear and fury coursing through my veins. I picked up his phone, staring at the message in disbelief. Mia? James? No, there had to be an explanation. I was jumping to conclusions, wasn't I? But deep down, I already knew. That tiny seed of doubt that had been growing over the past few weeks had finally taken root, and it was blooming into full-blown heartbreak. My hands shook as I put his phone back down, the weight of betrayal settling over me like a thick, suffocating fog. I sat there, feeling paralyzed. How could they? How could James, the man I trusted with all my heart, betray me like this? And with Mia, my own sister? The thought was unbearable, a twisted nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I tried to stay calm as I waited for him to finish his shower, but inside, I was breaking. When he finally came out, wrapped in a towel, I forced myself to look at him, fighting the urge to scream. I wanted answers, but I didn't know how to begin. Should I confront him now? Or wait until I had more proof? Taking a shaky breath, I decided to hold off, at least for the moment. I needed time to process this, to figure out what to do. But one thing was clear: the perfect picture I had painted of my life with James and Mia was nothing more than a lie. The trust one had in both of them had been shattered, and I wasn't sure if it could ever be rebuilt. I left his apartment that night, my mind spinning, my heart aching. I didn't know where to go or what to do. All I knew was that my life would never be the same. The betrayal cut deep, and as I drove home, tears streaming down my face, I realized that the people I had trusted most had become the ones I feared most. I was left alone, with only my broken heart and unanswered questions. The following days were torture. My mind replayed the message from Mia on James's phone over and over. I could hardly eat or sleep, the betrayal seeping into every part of my life. I kept going back and forth, debating whether I should confront them or gather more evidence first. I needed to be certain, even though my heart already knew the truth. After hours of deliberation, I decided to confront James. If he was honest, maybe I could find some way to understand. Maybe he'd tell me it was a misunderstanding, something small that had gotten blown out of proportion. As painful as the thought was, I needed to hear it from him. I called him over to my apartment the next evening. The moment he walked in, I felt a wave of nausea. His casual smile, the ease with which he greeted me, it all felt like a cruel joke. How could he act so normal, knowing what he'd done? I forced myself to stay calm, masking the storm of emotions that threatened to overwhelm me. James, I began, my voice steadier than I expected. I need to talk to you about something important. Sure, he said, sitting down on the couch across from me. His smile faded as he looked at me, sensing my seriousness. What's up? Taking a deep breath, I looked him straight in the eyes. Are you seeing someone else? The question hung heavy in the air between us. For a moment, he looked taken aback, as if he hadn't expected me to ask so directly. But then I saw something flicker in his expression, a hint of guilt, maybe fear. What? No, he stammered, but he couldn't meet my gaze. His eyes darted around the room, his hands fidgeting nervously. Why would you ask that? Because I saw a message on your phone, I said, my voice trembling with barely restrained anger. A message from Mia. She said she misses you already and can't wait to see you again. Care to explain that? James went pale, his mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. He was caught, and he knew it. The silence stretched on, and the anger inside me began to grow. He didn't even have the decency to come clean right away. Finally, he spoke, his voice barely a whisper. It was a mistake. I didn't mean for it to happen. Those words hit me like a physical blow. A mistake? You didn't mean for it to happen. My voice rose, incredulous. How does that even work, James? You just accidentally started seeing my sister. It was a moment of weakness, I swear, he said, his voice desperate. I love you. I've always loved you. It didn't mean anything. It just happened. I laughed bitterly, my hands clenching into fists. Didn't mean anything? You betrayed me with my own sister, James. Do you even understand what you've done? He reached out, as if to touch my hand, but I pulled away. His face crumpled, and for a moment I saw something that resembled remorse. But it wasn't enough, not after everything he'd put me through. Why Mia? I whispered, my voice breaking. Of all people, why her? He hesitated, struggling to find the words. It wasn't planned, he said finally, his voice hollow. We were just hanging out one day and, I don't know, things got out of hand. I didn't want to hurt you, I swear. But you did, James. You hurt me in the worst possible way. I felt the tears start to fall, and I didn't bother to wipe them away. And you're standing here, trying to tell me it didn't mean anything? That it was just a moment of weakness? He lowered his head, unable to meet my gaze. For a brief moment, I saw the man I thought I knew, the one who had been my rock, my partner, the one I thought would always have my back. But that image shattered as I looked at him now, a stranger who had torn my world apart. I'm sorry, he said, his voice barely audible. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know what to say. There's nothing you can say, James. My voice was cold, each word laced with the pain he had caused. You chose to betray me. You chose Mia over me. He looked up, his eyes filled with regret. Please, just give me a chance to make it right. I shook my head, feeling the last remnants of my love for him crumble. There's no making this right, James. Not after what you've done. He reached out again, his hand trembling. Please. But I couldn't stay there any longer. Without another word, I turned and walked away, leaving him standing alone in my living room. The weight of his betrayal pressed down on me, suffocating, but I knew I couldn't let him see how much he had broken me. As I stepped out into the cool night air, I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I had lost the person I thought I could trust more than anyone in the world. But I still had a long way to go before I could even think about healing. And somewhere deep inside, a new resolve began to grow. James and Mia may have broken my heart, but I wasn't about to let them destroy me. A few days passed before I gathered the courage to confront Mia. I needed time to process the pain, the betrayal, and all the questions that had been swirling around my mind since James admitted the affair. I'd spent sleepless nights wondering how my own sister, my best friend since childhood, could betray me like this. I was filled with anger and sadness, but most of all, I was determined to hear her side. I needed answers, closure, something to help me understand why she would do this to me. When I finally decided to confront her, I texted her, asking her to meet me at our favorite coffee shop. The irony wasn't lost on me. This was the place where we'd shared countless laughs and secrets, never imagining that we'd end up here, in this mess. She replied quickly, her tone cheerful as if nothing were wrong, which only deepened my anger. How could she pretend that everything was normal? I arrived early, my mind racing as I waited. I didn't know exactly what I would say, but I knew I needed to remain calm, to keep control of my emotions. She arrived a few minutes later, smiling as she walked in, completely oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. Hey, Mia greeted me with her usual enthusiasm, taking a seat across from me. What's up? You sounded serious in your text. I took a deep breath, meeting her gaze with a steely resolve. Mia, I know about you and James. The smile fell from her face instantly. Her eyes widened, and she looked down, unable to meet my gaze. She knew exactly what I was talking about. I don't know what you're talking about, she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. Don't lie to me, Mia, I said, my voice trembling with a mixture of hurt and anger. I saw the text you sent him. Can't wait to see you again. Miss you already. Do you really think I wouldn't find out? She looked up, her face flushed with guilt, but she didn't say anything. The silence between us was heavy, almost unbearable, as if every unspoken word was suffocating us both. Finally, she took a deep breath, her hands shaking as she clasped them on the table. I didn't mean for it to happen, she whispered, echoing James's words. It just happened. Stop saying that, I snapped, my voice laced with frustration. It didn't just happen, Mia. You made a choice. You chose to betray me. Do you have any idea how much this has hurt me? Her eyes filled with tears, and she reached out as if to touch my hand, but I pulled back. I couldn't bear to let her touch me, not after what she had done. I'm so sorry, she said, her voice breaking. I never wanted to hurt you, I swear. It was a stupid, horrible mistake, and I wish I could take it back. Then why did you do it? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Why, Mia? You're my sister. I trusted you more than anyone in the world, and you threw that all away. For what? She wiped her tears, struggling to find the right words. I don't know, she admitted. I was feeling lonely, and James was there. We just started talking more, and one thing led to another. I wasn't thinking about you, about us, and I hate myself for it. Her confession cut deep, each word like a knife to my heart. Part of me wanted to believe her, to forgive her, but the pain was still too raw, too fresh. Do you love him? I asked, the question slipping out before I could stop myself. It was a ridiculous thought, but part of me needed to know if there was any deeper reason behind this betrayal. She shook her head quickly. No, I don't. It was never about that. It was just a horrible, stupid mistake. I've ruined everything, and I don't know how to fix it. I sighed, feeling the weight of her words settle over me like a heavy blanket. She looked genuinely remorseful, but that didn't change the fact that she'd broken my trust in the worst possible way. I don't know if I can ever forgive you, I said, my voice trembling. You were my sister, my best friend, and now I don't even know who you are. Her face crumpled, fresh tears streaming down her cheeks. I understand. I don't expect you to forgive me, not after what I did. But please, just know that I am so sorry. The vulnerability in her voice tugged at something deep inside me, a part of me that still loved her despite everything. But I knew that forgiveness wouldn't come easily. This wasn't something that could be patched up with a simple apology. I stood up, unable to bear the sight of her tears any longer. I need some time to process all of this. I don't know what our relationship will look like after this, but right now, I just need space. She nodded, not arguing or trying to convince me otherwise. I understand, she whispered, her voice filled with regret. I'll give you all the time you need. Just, please know that I'm here whenever you're ready to talk. I turned to leave, feeling a mixture of relief and sadness wash over me. As much as I wanted to cut her out of my life entirely, I knew it wouldn't be that simple. She was my sister, my family, and a part of me still cared about her despite the pain she'd caused. As I walked away, I felt a strange sense of closure. I didn't have all the answers, but I had finally confronted her, finally heard the truth. It didn't make the pain go away, but it was a start. James and Mia had betrayed me in the worst possible way, but I was determined to move forward, to find healing and peace on my own terms. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew that I was strong enough to face it, one step at a time. After that confrontation with Mia, I felt a mix of emotions, anger, sadness, but also a strange sense of relief. The truth was out. There was no more guessing, no more wondering if I was being paranoid. She admitted it, and though the betrayal still hurt like nothing else, I finally felt free to focus on my own healing without any more lies clouding my mind. In the days that followed, I kept my distance from both James and Mia. It felt strange to go from talking to them every day to complete silence, but I needed this separation. I needed time and space to regain my sense of self, to remember who I was before all of this happened. I decided to throw myself into work and my hobbies. I picked up painting again, something I'd loved as a teenager but hadn't had time for in years. I found that the quiet rhythm of the brush on the canvas was oddly therapeutic, allowing me to focus on something beautiful instead of the chaos in my life. Each stroke of color was like a small victory, a reminder that I still had control over some parts of my life, even if others were in disarray. My friends rallied around me too, offering their support without pushing me to talk about what happened. They'd seen the toll the breakup had taken on me, but they respected my need for space and let me lead the conversations when I was ready. Their presence was a quiet strength in my life, a reminder that not everyone would hurt or betray me. One evening, I received a message from Mia. It had been a few weeks since we last spoke, and I was surprised to see her name flash on my screen. I hesitated before opening it, my heart pounding as I wondered what she could possibly want. "I know I'm the last person you want to hear from right now," she wrote. "But I just wanted to say I'm truly sorry again. I don't expect forgiveness, but I miss you. You're my sister, and it breaks my heart that I hurt you like this. If there's ever a chance to make things right, I'll be here." I stared at the message, feeling a lump rise in my throat. A part of me wanted to respond, to tell her that I missed her too despite everything, but another part of me knew that I wasn't ready. I couldn't just let her back into my life after what she'd done, not without some serious time to heal. I put my phone down without replying, deciding that I would respond when I felt ready, not when she was. Several months passed, and as time went on, I felt myself gradually healing. The pain was still there, but it didn't control me like it once had. I'd rebuilt parts of my life, and I felt stronger than ever. One evening, out of the blue, I ran into James at a mutual friend's party. I hadn't seen him since everything had fallen apart, and the sight of him brought a wave of emotions I wasn't prepared for. He looked surprised to see me too, but he quickly composed himself and approached me. "Hey, Emma," he said, his voice hesitant, almost apologetic. "Hi," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. I wasn't sure if I wanted to have a conversation with him, but a part of me also felt that this could be the closure I needed. "Can we talk for a second?" he asked, gesturing toward a quieter corner of the room. I agreed, feeling a strange sense of calm wash over me. I was no longer the heartbroken person I'd been all those months ago, and I wanted him to see that. When we were alone, he sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I just want to say I'm sorry," he began. "I messed up, and I know that. I hurt you, and I hate myself for it." I nodded, appreciating his honesty, but not feeling much sympathy. "I know, James. I've had a lot of time to think, and I'm honestly just focused on moving on now." He looked down, as if he hadn't expected me to be so calm. "I don't expect anything from you," he said quietly. "I just wanted you to know that if I could take it back, I would. Losing you was the biggest mistake of my life." I met his gaze, feeling a sense of peace wash over me. "I appreciate you saying that, but we both made choices that led us here. I've grown from it, and I hope you do too." With that, I walked away, leaving him standing alone. I realized that I'd finally let go of the anger and pain that had been holding me back. I was free from the weight of our past, ready to embrace the future on my own terms. After months of keeping my distance, I finally felt ready to talk to Mia again. The anger had faded somewhat, replaced by a sense of longing for the bond we'd once shared. She was my sister, and despite the betrayal, I wanted to believe there was a path forward. I couldn't say for sure what it would look like, but I was willing to try. I texted her, asking if she'd like to meet up. Within minutes, she replied, her response filled with gratitude and relief. We agreed to meet at the same coffee shop where we'd had our confrontation months before. This time, I felt different, a bit stronger, a bit more in control. When she walked in, Mia looked nervous, her gaze darting around before finally landing on me. She looked almost hesitant, as though she were afraid I'd change my mind and walk out at any moment. I waved her over, offering a small smile, and she breathed a sigh of relief as she took the seat across from me. "Thank you for meeting me," she began, her voice quiet but sincere. "I know I don't deserve it, and I'll spend my life regretting what I did to you." I took a deep breath, letting her words sink in. I know you're sorry, Mia, and I appreciate it. But I need you to understand that this isn't something I can just forget. It changed everything. She nodded, her eyes filled with regret. I understand. I'm not expecting things to go back to the way they were. I miss you. I miss us. Her words hit me hard, reminding me of all the good memories we'd shared, memories that had been tainted by her actions. But as I sat there, I realized that those memories still held value. She was still my sister, and while I couldn't pretend that everything was okay, I was willing to try to rebuild something new. I miss you too, I admitted, my voice softer than I'd intended. But if we're going to try this, it has to be honest. No more lies, no more secrets. She nodded eagerly, relief washing over her face. I promise, Emma. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. We spent the next few hours talking, not about James or the betrayal, but about everything else. We laughed, reminisced, and slowly began to reconnect. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start, a fragile bridge over the chasm that her actions had created. And for the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope that we could find our way back to each other, one step at a time. As the months went by, I found myself moving forward in ways I hadn't thought possible. My relationship with Mia was still a work in progress, but we were taking small steps, rebuilding trust little by little. I didn't know if we'd ever be as close as we once were, but I was okay with that. We were both growing, and that was enough. One afternoon, as I was organizing my apartment, I came across an old photo of me, Mia, and James, taken at a time when everything felt simple and happy. I stared at it for a long moment, a mixture of sadness and nostalgia filling my chest. But instead of letting it drag me down, I found myself smiling. Those memories, though tainted, were still a part of my life's journey. They had shaped me, taught me lessons I hadn't known I needed to learn. I took the photo, tucked it into a drawer, and closed it, feeling a sense of closure wash over me. A few weeks later, I went to a party with some friends, feeling more like myself than I had in a long time. I was laughing, dancing, and simply enjoying the night when I met someone new. Her name was Sophia, and she had this warm smile and a kindness in her eyes that made me feel at ease. We started talking, sharing stories about our lives, and I felt a spark that I hadn't felt in a long time. There was no pressure, no expectations, just two people connecting, genuinely and honestly. As the night went on, I found myself smiling more than I had in ages. I didn't know where things with Sophia would go, but for the first time, I felt open to the possibilities. I wasn't held back by the pain of the past. Instead, I was looking forward, embracing the future with a newfound sense of hope. In that moment, I realized that I'd come full circle. I'd been hurt, broken, and betrayed, but I'd emerged stronger, ready to rebuild my life on my own terms. And no matter what happened next, I knew that I was going to be okay. I used to think that love would conquer all. When I married David, I believed we were indestructible. The warmth of his hand in mine, and the way he looked at me with those deep brown eyes made me acutely aware of how lucky I was to have found him. After the whirlwind romance, we tied the knot on a rainy Saturday in October, a day filled with promise and dreams of a perfect future. Little did I know then, the battles we would endure, the wars that would rage quietly behind closed doors, and the peace that always felt just out of reach. From the very beginning, I sensed something was off. The whispers in the corners of family gatherings, the way the laughter would diminish when I entered the room, it all painted a picture of a family that wasn't ready to accept me for who I was. I was different, a word often murmured, where different meant too loud, too opinionated, too independent for their liking. David's family was traditional, and I, a strong-willed woman with ambitions and dreams that extended beyond the small town where they resided, was like a storm they didn't know how to weather. I remember vividly my first encounter with them as David introduced me to his parents. His mother, Eleanor, offered a polite smile, her eyes betraying a sense of control she was keen to maintain. His father, Charles, was the silent type, an enigmatic figure whose disinterest in me was palpable. I had hoped for at least a shard of acceptance, but instead, I felt the weight of scrutinizing glares, like I was under a microscope in a very glassy, very fragile box. Over the years, family dinners became a battleground for my spirit, where every conversation echoed with the relentless sentiment that I didn't belong. I tried my best. I learned their rituals, participated in their traditions, but nothing seemed to bridge the chasm that existed between them and me. I would catch David's sister, Sarah, exchanging glances filled with disdain, little more than icy summer breezes cutting through the warm atmosphere, leaving chills in their wake. Maybe I should change, I suggested one evening as David and I sat on our worn-out couch, the comforting hum of our new home filling the air. It was a cozy place filled with photographs of our adventures, laughter echoing off the walls, but it was marred by the undercurrent of tension that followed me. Change. David raised an eyebrow. You're perfect the way you are, babe. This is who I fell in love with. His words wrapped around me like a warm embrace, yet the warmth grew cold when the reality of his family seeped into our lives again. A few months after that conversation, we were invited to a family gathering to celebrate Charles's retirement. I dressed carefully, an elegant blue dress and my favorite silver necklace, hoping to dazzle and charm, believing I could make them see me as I was, not an intruder, but a partner to their son. As the evening unfolded, the air filled with laughter and nostalgia. I sat beside David, my heart racing as I eased into conversations about the past, hoping to take part in the joy surrounding me. But it wasn't long before Sarah cornered me. "Do you really think he'll want to stay with you forever?" she asked, a smirk playing on her lips. Her voice dripped with disdain and an uncanny sense of superiority. I tried to smile through the discomfort that lodged in my throat like a stone. "Of course. Don't fool yourself. He deserves better." Her words sliced through the warmth that had enveloped me moments ago, leaving me vulnerable. I gave a half-hearted laugh, regaining my composure, but the encounter left an indelible mark. As the night progressed, I realized I was not welcome. I was an outsider, a graffiti on their family portrait. I sought refuge in the kitchen, the sound of water running seemingly drowning out the laughter that curled around me like a suffocating cloud. David followed, concern etched across his brow. "Why do you keep disappearing?" he asked softly, eyes searching mine. "Can't you see it, David? Your family doesn't want me here." "I'm just a reminder of the life they've always envisioned for you," I confessed, the air thick with unshed tears. He wrapped me in his arms, holding me close as if he could shield me from the storm with his mere presence. "That's not true. They'll come around. They just take time. Just keep being yourself." But with every retreat I made, every family gathering I attended, I felt more and more like a ghost haunting the family home. Conversations dwindled, and silences grew darker. It wasn't long before I faced the heart-wrenching thought I had managed to keep at bay for too long. My husband loved me, but did his family need to hate me for love to survive? One crisp autumn evening, I made the difficult decision to act. I approached David with a heavy heart, words tumbling from my lips like broken glass. "Maybe I should step away. Maybe it's better for everyone if I just let you have your family without worrying about me." He looked at me, shock mingled with hurt flickering in his eyes. "You can't just give up, Jess. We're a team." I nodded, but the burden of constant disapproval rested harshly upon my shoulders. "But at what cost, David? You shouldn't have to choose." Days turned into weeks as I wrestled with my thoughts, the silence between us growing into an unbearable distance. The conflict carved deep into my being, each heartbeat pulsing with the question, is this life truly worth the struggle? As the world outside shifted to the vibrant hues of autumn, I ultimately made my choice. One chilly afternoon, I walked up to David, the golden sunlight streaming through the maple leaves. "I'm here, I'll stay. But let's talk to your family about us. We need to be on the same page." His eyes widened, a flicker of hope igniting in his chest. "Really?" "Yes. We can either live in tension or find a way to coexist. They need to know we're steadfast, together, now and always," I declared, swallowing fear and doubt. That night, under a starry sky, we drafted ideas for our conversation, preparing for the challenge ahead. It wouldn't be easy, but love, as I had finally realized, was not just about finding peace within ourselves. Sometimes it demanded we stand our ground and face the unsettling realities of family, loyalty, and acceptance. United, we walked toward the tumultuous tides of family expectations together, with the understanding that no matter what happened, we were stronger than their whispers. In the end, the silence that loomed so heavily above us was ready to be rewritten into an anthem of our choosing, one we would try to compose as a family, not just David and me, but the family that would hopefully learn to embrace a new beginning. My name is Sarah, and 5 years of my life vanished in the blink of an eye. When I opened my eyes in a sterile hospital room, the world as I knew it was gone, replaced by a void of unfamiliarity. The doctors told me I had been in a coma after a devastating car accident. 5 years, 5 long years lost to darkness. The first face I saw was my fiancé, Nathan. He looked older, wearier, and his smile, though warm, carried a sadness I couldn't quite place. "Sarah, you're awake," he whispered, tears streaming down his face. His voice trembled, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. He held my hand tightly, but his touch felt different, less like love and more like guilt. The nurses bustled around, checking my vitals, exclaiming how miraculous it was that I had woken up after so long. But their voices felt distant, overshadowed by the storm of questions in my head. Where was my family? Why wasn't my sister, Megan, here? And why did Nathan seem so hesitant, almost guarded, as if he were hiding something? Nathan explained Megan's absence with a rehearsed ease that only made me more suspicious. She moved overseas for work. It was hard for her, Sarah, but life had to go on. His tone was casual, but his words were deliberate, like he was trying to convince me, or himself. Nathan brought me home to the house we had shared before the accident, but it no longer felt like mine. The furniture was different, the walls painted in colors I didn't recognize. Even the scent of the place was unfamiliar. I wandered through the house on my own one afternoon, hoping to reconnect with something familiar. That's when I found the locked door at the end of the hallway, a room that used to be a guest bedroom. When I asked Nathan about it, he shrugged. "It's just storage," he said quickly, almost too quickly. But the way his voice tightened told me otherwise. Nathan tried to make me feel comfortable, cooking my favorite meals and filling my days with soft reassurances. But beneath his kindness lay a growing tension. He would stiffen whenever I asked too many questions about the past 5 years. When I mentioned Megan again one evening, he snapped. "Why can't you just focus on recovering?" he barked. "She's not here. That's all you need to know." His reaction caught me off guard. Nathan had always been patient and calm. This outburst was unlike him. It only fueled my determination to dig deeper. Late one night, when Nathan had gone out for a quick errand, I decided to pick the lock to the guest room. My heart pounded as I slipped a bobby pin into the keyhole. After a few tense moments, the lock clicked and the door creaked open. Inside, I found boxes stacked neatly along the walls. One box sat open on a table, revealing an old photo album. My hands shook as I flipped through it. The album was filled with pictures of Nathan standing at the altar with a woman I didn't recognize. She had long blonde hair and a radiant smile. Written in delicate gold letters on the cover were the words, "Nathan and Emily, forever." Who is Emily? I demanded the next morning, holding up the album. Nathan froze, his face pale as a sheet. "Emily was someone I cared about while you were gone," he said, his voice trembling. "I thought I lost you, Sarah. I didn't know if you'd ever wake up." His confession hit me like a punch to the gut. While I had been trapped in darkness, he had fallen in love with someone else, married her, and now she was gone too. Nathan claimed Emily had passed away a year ago, but his story felt rehearsed, as if he were leaving out key details. And the way he avoided my eyes when he spoke only deepened my suspicions. As I struggled to process Nathan's betrayal, fragments of memory from the night of the accident began to surface. In these flashes, there was shouting, an argument so heated it made my chest tighten. And then there were the headlights, blindingly bright, and the sickening sound of metal crunching against metal. I tried to piece it together, but the memories were too fragmented, like a jigsaw puzzle with missing pieces. One thing stood out, though. I wasn't alone in the car. Determined to uncover the truth, I searched the house for more clues. In the attic, buried beneath old Christmas decorations, I found a diary. It belonged to Megan. Her final entry sent chills down my spine. I can't keep this secret any longer. If Sarah ever wakes up, she deserves to know the truth. Nathan will hate me, but she's my sister. She has a right to know everything. When I confronted Nathan about the diary, his reaction was explosive. "Why are you digging into the past?" he shouted, his voice shaking with anger. "It won't change anything. Megan is gone, and Emily is gone. You're all I have left, Sarah." His words were desperate, almost pleading, but they only confirmed my fears. He was hiding something, and Megan's disappearance was at the heart of it. As the days passed, strange things began to happen. I found a photo of Megan in a drawer, her face scratched out. A neighbor mentioned seeing Nathan with another woman just months before I woke up. And then there was the letter. It arrived in the mail one afternoon, written in shaky handwriting. "Sarah, don't trust Nathan. He's not who you think he is." Megan knew the truth, and it cost her everything. Who sent the letter? What had Megan known that made her a target? And could I trust my own memories? As I stared at the letter, a realization dawned on me. The night of the accident wasn't an accident at all. But if that were true, who had been behind the wheel? Nathan or Megan? I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't let this go. I stared at the letter, my hands trembling. The words, "Don't trust Nathan," were seared into my mind, but the cryptic warning only deepened the mystery. Who had sent it? What truth had Megan uncovered, and why had it cost her everything? Nathan came home that evening, oblivious to the storm raging in my mind. He kissed my forehead and asked about my day as if we were just another couple navigating normal life. But there was nothing normal about my life or him. That night, as Nathan slept, I quietly slipped out of bed and retrieved the letter from its hiding spot in my bedside table. I examined every detail, hoping for some hidden clue. There was nothing except the words and the overwhelming feeling that someone out there wanted to help me. The next morning, my phone rang. The number was blocked. "Hello?" I answered, my voice shaky. "Stop asking questions," a distorted voice warned. "You're not ready for the answers." Before I could respond, the line went dead. My heart pounded. Someone was watching me, listening to me. But who? And why? I didn't tell Nathan about the call. Instead, I decided to confide in someone I hadn't seen since waking up, Detective Liam Price, the officer assigned to my accident years ago. Detective Price's office hadn't changed in 5 years. The smell of stale coffee lingered, and his desk was still buried under piles of paperwork. When he saw me walk in, his eyes widened in disbelief. "Sarah? I heard you woke up, but wow." He shook his head, struggling to find the words. "What brings you here?" I handed him the letter and told him everything: Nathan's secrets, Megan's disappearance, Emily's death, and the argument I vaguely remembered from the night of the accident. Price leaned back in his chair, his expression grim. "You're not wrong to be suspicious. After your accident, there were inconsistencies in Nathan's story. But without hard evidence, my hands were tied." He pulled out an old file labeled Sarah Collins, accident report. "I'll reopen the case, but be careful. If Nathan's hiding something, he won't take kindly to you digging into his past." That evening, while Nathan was in the shower, I searched his study for anything incriminating. In the back of a drawer, I found an old phone, one I had never seen before. It was locked, but curiosity got the better of me. I brought the phone to a tech-savvy friend, Olivia, who managed to unlock it. What we found left us both speechless. Texts between Nathan and Megan. "Megan, I can't keep lying to her, Nathan. She deserves to know. Nathan, if you tell her, you'll regret it. Stay out of this." Photos of Emily in our house. They were dated just weeks before my accident. Armed with the texts and photos, I confronted Nathan. He didn't deny it. Instead, his expression darkened, and his voice dropped to a menacing tone I had never heard before. "You don't understand, Sarah. Everything I did was for us. For you. For me." I scoffed. You lied to me, cheated on me, and now Megan is missing. What else are you hiding? His jaw tightened. You don't want to know. That night, I locked the bedroom door and slept with a knife under my pillow. The memories of the accident came back stronger than ever. In my dreams, I saw flashes of Megan's face, her eyes filled with fear. I heard her voice shouting, "You're making a mistake." When I woke up, I was drenched in sweat. Was she talking to me or Nathan? And what mistake had she meant? One day, while Nathan was at work, I noticed something strange about the basement. The door, which was usually locked, had been left ajar. I hesitated for a moment before descending the creaky stairs. At first, the basement seemed unremarkable, just old furniture and boxes. But then I noticed a section of the floor that looked newer than the rest. My stomach churned as I realized what it might mean. Using a crowbar, I pried up the floorboards. Beneath them, I found a small box containing Megan's necklace, the one she always wore. Desperate for answers, I spoke to our elderly neighbor, Mrs. Harper, who had lived next door for decades. I always thought something was strange about Nathan, she said, her voice low. I saw him arguing with a woman in the driveway the night of your accident. She didn't look like you. Was it Megan? I asked, my heart racing. Mrs. Harper nodded. Yes, dear. It was her. Detective Price called me a few days later with a breakthrough. He had tracked Megan's last known location to a small town 2 hours away. She had checked into a motel but never checked out. Security footage showed her meeting Nathan in the parking lot. After that, she vanished. When I confronted Nathan with this new information, he finally cracked. Megan threatened to expose everything, he admitted, his voice shaking. She was going to ruin us, Sarah. I had to stop her. Tears streamed down his face, but I felt no sympathy. What did you do to her, Nathan? His silence was deafening. The anonymous letter, the hidden phone, the nightmares, they all pointed to one truth. Megan had known something that cost her life. But what was it? One night, I returned to the attic and found a second diary tucked inside an old box. This one belonged to Emily. Her final entry read, Nathan isn't who he seems. If you're reading this, Sarah, run. He's dangerous. Realizing I was in danger, I packed a bag and fled in the middle of the night. I went to Detective Price and handed over everything I had found, the texts, the photos, Megan's necklace, and Emily's diary. Nathan was arrested the next morning, but his smug expression as he was led away told me it wasn't over. Months later, I received another letter in the same shaky handwriting. You've only scratched the surface. There's more to the story, but you're not ready for it yet. Who sent the letters? Was Nathan the mastermind, or was there someone else pulling the strings? And what really happened to Megan and Emily? The answers might be out there, but one thing is certain. My life will never be the same. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe, please.